Maybe he could build also some plants here in Romania for Tesla.
When the elections got cancelled, he put out a tweet saying, how can a judge cancel an election and not be considered a dictator? He's referring to Romania.
It's a rhetorical question, of course.
Yeah, so he's very vocal about what's happening in Romania. He's very concerned, and the West is very concerned. J.D. Vance referenced Romania indirectly by talking about cancelled elections.
So here we have to introduce a new category, which is called judicial activism, right? You have judges who typically are allowed to measure and ponder on some issues which are limited in scope. But all of a sudden, some judges, 9 judges from the Constitutional Court, who are political appointees, then can actually engage in political and judiciary activism, which basically goes way beyond the scope of their initial, I would say, calling, right? So how can we combat that? Basically, we have to, I would say, rewrite the Constitution. And also what we need to do is to make sure that the constant reference to the will of the people is being present in the foundational law. In America, you have the right to recall, am I right? So a politician in America who basically betrays the vote of the electorate, of the people, he can be called back, sent back home, even from the Senate or from the House of Representatives. In Romania, we don't have that institution. But that institution, the right to recall...
You can impeach though in Romania or no?
You can't impeach an MP. You cannot impeach a judge, again. And something has to be done in terms of, creating more referendums, perhaps like in Switzerland. I see in Switzerland always the people being asked to pass a judgment, to express their intention or their vote or their opinion on issues like, say, how many mosques should we build in Switzerland? And the answer was none, right? So why don't we actually go back to that old participatory understanding of democracy? Because people now have the tools, right? Technology allows you to easily conduct a survey and ask the majority of Romanians, what do you make of this? We should be transforming, I think, our structures and our institutions in the light of the new technological advances.
So going back to today, though, what can you do to fight the corruption that we're seeing here and for the elections to be, to not be cancelled?
Resumed, I would say.
Yeah, not resumed. The election should be done, or like the second round.
Yeah,
exactly. What can be done? Because we're seeing everything going in the wrong direction. We're seeing the house of his campaign manager got raided 2 days ago. We're seeing him worried. We did the interview at his friend's house because that was the only safe place for him. And that house was also, the police were outside the door 2 weeks ago.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, exactly.
Soviet Union in the 70s. Yeah.
Exactly, just heading in the wrong direction. So what could be done now? We're seeing a lot of people vocal from other democracies, especially the US, but we're also seeing a lot of resistance in Brussels.
So first of all, let me thank you for what you do, right? I don't know you much, but I think it's amazing what you're doing right now on X, on other platforms, and from the bottom of my heart, big thanks to you, because we need such young people, and this type of journalism that you're engaging in is essential for the future, I would say, of our democracies. Secondly, I want to thank President Milei from Argentina. I want to thank President Andrzej Duda from Poland. I want to thank J.D. Vance, Vice President of the United States, and soon probably I will thank Mr. Trump for their support, okay? They expressed a very explicit support for the Romanian democracy, right? They didn't express a support for a particular candidate, but they expressed support for a certain type of mechanism. I would say for a certain type of tradition, right? Democracy is embedded in a particular tradition, and that tradition should not be destroyed. We've had elections in this country, I would say, since 1866, and it's such a pity that in the 21st century we see elections cancelled, just like in some African countries or third world countries which were ruled by dictators, military dictators in particular. Now, we have to have international pressure, and this has to be sustained. We expect journalists from the United States, maybe Tucker Carlson, to pay attention to this. Alex Jones, the enemy of Alex Soros, already pay attention to this. We expect more journalists to pay attention to what's happening in Romania. But also we need internal pressure, right? And we took it to the streets of Bucharest maybe a month ago. We were 100,000 people on the streets of Bucharest rallying against the government, and probably we'll have new protests and rallies in Bucharest. We will put pressure from this institution called the Parliament. We will try to basically get rid of the current government. We will have maybe this week, this coming week, a new test for our democracy, because we are going to collect votes from the opposition parties, and we will see how many people are interested in getting rid of the socialists who are right now in power. And slowly we will manage to basically restore our democratic principles and values. I'm sure of that.
And what are your thoughts on the amount of interference that we've seen from organizations like USAID? It's like every day we're discovering more of the amount
USAID.
Correct, yeah. USAID.
Yeah, that's not a very decent aid that we got, right?
Okay, you're highlighting the aid part.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's well past. That's why now we call it USAID, not USAID. But you know, when you start seeing those revelations happening in the US with Doge and what Elon's doing, what were your initial thoughts, especially when you see the amount of money being spent on things that should be none of America's business?
Well, I would expect some people to do the same in Brussels and to reveal the amount of money, public money.
I think that would be much more.
Yeah, which was spent for similar practices, for bribing journalists to take a stand, to express critical opinions of conservative politicians, and to, of course, endorse the cartel, the political cartel made of socialists and popular parties in Brussels. I mean, you know, how many millions they've spent, or billions? It's hard to tell. But the thing is that apart from the US aid, so the US aid came with the money, but who created the network, right? Who created basically the army of leftist propagandists in a pretty Leninist style, okay? If you read the history of the Communist Party, you realize they were very good at creating the new man in the shape and form of a propagandist, right? An activist. These were the two qualities that people had to be a good propagandist and to be a good activist. You didn't have to think, right? You didn't have to be really like a solid type or solid person in terms of morality. No, that wasn't necessary. You just had to be a very good propagandist.